Hello and welcome to the 13th class of Most Important Current Affairs series for the UPSC Prelims 2020. In our previous lecture, we were doing the April month current affair related to economy, and in that economy section of the April month, now we have been left with these 8 topics, okay? So what I'm planning to do is that in this lecture I will cover these 4 topics, and in the next lecture I will cover these 4 topics. Then we can go to the May month economy section. So let us have a brief introduction of the topics to be covered today. First one is UNCTAD's Trade and Development Report Update. And what is that? UNCTAD, United Nations Organization it is. UNCTAD came with a Trade and Development Report 2019 previously. Now they have come with an update of it. The original report came in September 2019 only. But why the update? Because there is some data update also, and also the COVID problem has created a situation that we need to look upon the data again, and we need to take some decisions so that this calamity of COVID calamity and the impact on developing countries can be reduced. This report has a theme, this report has a name. The title is From the Great Lockdown to the Great Meltdown, Developing Country Date in the Time of COVID-19. What is that? Previously, because of COVID, we have this lockdown in different countries, and the economies are in crisis. So that we can say that this great lockdown is also causing the great meltdown of the economy. Particularly, this report deals with the debt situation in the developing countries. Many of the developing countries already had taken debt. According to the previous 2019 report also, many countries were in huge debt. But because of this COVID lockdown, the market and the workforce, everything is suppressed. So because of that suppression, because of that slowdown, these countries won't be for them it won't be possible to repay the debt they had taken. So that is why this report got an update from UNCTAD, and it tries to deal with the situation of those countries which are very negatively affected by COVID-19 situation. That is why developing country date in the time of COVID-19. And why this update? Because the report says that if this debt of these developing country economies is not taken care of, that can lead to sovereign default. Sovereign default means the government will default on the loans taken, the debts taken, and it will be a chain reaction. So across the globe, we will see the developing world defaulting on sovereign debt taken. So that is a problem. The report says that even by the end of 2018, when there was no COVID or nothing, global economy was having a slowdown. And because of that slowdown, these developing countries, if you add up the debt stock, that means total debt of these developing countries, external debt, domestic debt, private or public, everything, that was almost 191%, almost double of their combined GDP. Can you imagine? Almost double of their combined GDP, the debt they have taken, if we calculate the debt overall, that is debt stock, external, domestic, private and public, everything. And that record, the 191% debt, is till now the highest on the record. The UNCTAD report says that. Now that was the past situation by the end of 2018. The report also predicts the future. Report says that if these countries want to repay the loan they had taken, the debt they had taken, if they want to do it by 2020-2021 year, the repayments on their public external debt will be estimated as $3.4 trillion total. And then report links this $3.4 trillion or highest record till now with the COVID situation. And it says that there is negative impact on their commodity and services exports. Exports are not happening. Services or commodity, whatever, the exports are not happening because no country is allowing many exports and imports. So that is a global situation. But these countries are dependent on exports. These countries are dependent on remittances also, because their people are working in different nations in developed countries. For example, Indians working in Middle East. So the remittances are not coming because there is lockdown. So how the labor will work? So these foreign currencies which could have helped these countries to meet their external debt obligation, these currencies are not coming. Also, when an economy weakens, there is capital outflow and there is depreciation of their currency also. When there is depreciation of one currency against the developed nation's currency, for example US dollar, then their debt in terms of US dollar will increase. Suppose they had taken only $100, but their currency was suppose take an ideal situation, their currency was also equal to $1. So in that situation they had taken only $100 loan. But now if the depreciation happens and their currency is devalued or depreciated by suppose $1 becomes two values of that currency, so now the debt will become $200, and this will cause a steep increase in the value of foreign currency denominated debt. If they had taken the debt in foreign currency, which obviously the developing nation will always take the debt in foreign currency, and mostly it is in US dollar only, and if that situation depreciation happens, then there will be huge increase in the already taken debt or already taken loan. So, does the report suggest some solutions? Yes, it does. It says that at least $2.5 trillion will be required for these countries to fight with this COVID-19 crisis and repay their loan. And for that, there are some global initiatives in this direction. First initiative is by IMF. IMF says that we will cancel the due debt repayments by IMF. So IMF also provides some debt, provides some loans. So IMF will cancel due debt already, which debt was already pending. IMF will cancel that. Second is debt service suspension initiative for poorest countries announced by G20. So you can see the IMF is also working, G20 is also working. G20 will say that G20 is saying that they will cancel or suspend the debt service. That means repayment of the debt. They will suspend the repayment of the debt by poorest countries. So this is about suspension and cancellation of the previous debt. So but these countries, the developing nations, will also need extra money. They will need the loan again. So but for that, both IMF and World Bank have together announced that they will do the enhanced lending facility or enhanced debt facilities for these developing countries and members, so that they can deal with this COVID-19 situation crisis. Meanwhile, United Nations also got a vacant. So United Nations came with a strategy. That strategy is known as a new global debt deal. Global debt deal for developing countries. This is an initiative by United Nations. It has 3 steps. 1, 2, 3 steps. First step is automatic temporary standstills. What is that? Standstill means no, we won't do anything. Okay. So what is that? We won't do anything. For example, suppose a country is not able to pay back the debt. So UN says that in the situation when a developing nation is not able to pay back the debt, you can't do this creditor enforcement actions. That is seizing the assets, initiating court proceedings against any sovereign creditors. These things won't happen for the time, and these things will be obviously temporary measures, temporary standstills, because this can't continue. That will lead to any country taking the loans and advances and they not repaying it, and no seizure will happen, no court proceeding will happen. So this is a temporary measure, and it is a part of United Nations strategy, global debt deal for developing countries only. Second step is debt relief and restructuring programs. What is that? We will do the reassessment of long-term developing country debt sustainability on a case-by-case basis. So what does that mean? Suppose a country had taken loan for 5 years and now the country is not able to pay the loan. So we will increase that. We will increase that duration, and we will say to the country, to the developing nation, okay, fine, you are in problem. Now you can pay back your loan in 10 years. Also, suppose the interest was 10%. That country will be said that okay, fine, not 10%, you just pay the 7% interest. That is debt relief and restructuring program, the second step. Third step is establishment of an international developing country debt authority for overseeing all these things. This will be an autonomous international organization, and it will be made by an international treaty between concerned nations of the United Nations, concerned nations like developing countries nations. So these are the 3 steps of global debt deal proposed by United Nations for the developing countries. I suggest you to give a brief introduction of UNCTAD in the comment section, please. Anyway, second topic is Operation Twist by the RBI. This is to boost investment, long-term investment in our country. This Operation Twist is really a very, very, very complex thing, but I will try to explain you in simple words. This is a very tricky thing. Okay. First of all, what is the news and what is the situation? The plan is that RBI already done. Okay, already done. It was in news in April month. So RBI said that at that time that RBI will do purchasing and selling of the government securities. See, purchasing also, the selling also. So they will purchase the short-term bonds of 10,000 rupees. 10,000 crore rupees, sorry, and they will in return sell the 10,000 rupees crore long term bonds. Sorry, reverse the situation. They will purchase the long term bonds of 10,000 crore rupees, and in return they will sell the short term bonds of 10,000 crore rupees in the open market operation. So RBI, again I will explain it. RBI is buying the long term securities or bonds from the market through open market operation, and in return RBI is selling the same amount 10,000 crore rupees short term bonds to the market. So what will happen? This will lead to a transition where short term securities will be converted into long term securities. Why? The RBI had a stock of short term securities. It is selling it in market, and market is giving to the RBI the long term securities. So RBI will have less short term securities and more long term securities. So what will that do actually? The final result will be there will be decrease in long term interest rate, and it will lead to increase in short term interest rates. We are now mostly focusing on decreasing the long term interest rate. Why? Long term interest rates when decreased, the investment will happen. The people will, the companies will, the institutes will get the loan which are cheaper in nature for the long term investment, and that will lead to infrastructure investment in our country. So what are the technicalities? How does this happen? See, RBI is buying the long term securities, right? RBI is buying the long term securities, so the prices will go up. The bond prices will increase because RBI is buying it from the market, so market will have a shortage of long term securities. When the shortage is happening, their price will increase. That is okay, that is obvious. When the bond prices are increasing, there is an inverse relationship between bond price and bond yield. Remember that bond yield and bond price have an inverse relationship. There is a mechanism involved. I'm not going to explain this in prelims focused preparation. So bond prices will increase by when RBI is buying the long term bonds from the market, government securities from the market. Bond prices increase will lead to decrease in their yields. One thing, that decrease in yield is good for the economy. Okay. Second thing is that this yield has a direct relationship with your market interest rate. So when the yield is decreasing, interest rate will decrease. When the interest rate will decrease, people will not go for long term savings, because the interest rate they will get from bank from long term saving will be less, because yield is decreasing. Once the yield decreases, this long term interest rate saving rate also decreases, and the people will not deposit their money in bank in saving account. Instead they will spend it, they will do the expenditure. Once this spending happens, your consumption in your economy will increase. That is the purpose of this operation twist. This will also benefit investors. Investors will be benefiting from easing of yield of long term bonds, because investors are highly exposed to long term debt, right? And consumers or borrowers will also benefit. The small consumers or borrowers will also benefit. Why? Because the retail loans will now get cheaper, because interest rate is decreasing in economy, repo rate and everything will decrease. Retail loans will become cheaper. Previously what was happening, the banks had to price their loans, retail loans, at higher rates, because government yields had high rates. And the economy interest rate and the lending rate, everything is proportional to your bond yield of the government securities, the long term securities. So government security bond yield was high, so interest rate in our economy was high, the lending rate was high. Everything will now decrease, so the loans will become cheaper, investment will happen. That cheaping of retail loans, that will mean that there will be boost in consumption economy and a spending in economy, that will revive the growth, the stagnant growth we are seeing. And then we need to discuss what are open market operation. The name says it all. In open, the RBI doing transaction for the government securities, buying it or purchasing it or selling it, whatever, that is open market operation. These are market operations conducted by RBI by way of sale and purchase of government securities. Okay, only the government securities, not the private debt, to and from the market. And what is the objective? To adjust the rupee liquidity conditions in the market. Sometimes RBI will do what? RBI will sell the government securities and people will give the money. So RBI gets the money and liquidity is sucked out from the market. And sometimes what RBI will do? RBI will sell the government securities, previously buying of the government securities. RBI will buy the government securities from the market. Then what will happen? RBI will take from market government securities and inject some liquidity cash in the market. So when government securities are coming from market to RBI, money will be injected in the market. And when the government securities are going from RBI to market, money will be sucked up from market and RBI will take it. This is a inverse relation. Now here comes our next topic, very easy topic, revised FDI policy. See, we have huge investment coming from China. So government came with a very good trick. Now government of India has made its approval for FDI by neighboring countries mandatory. Government says that any neighboring country investment in India or FDI in India, that cannot be through automatic route. There will be government approval needed. No automatic route investment by neighboring countries into India. And in that neighboring country, because China also shares the border, the Chinese investment will also have to go through government's approval, and it can't go directly by automatic route. So we can somehow control the Chinese investment in our country, because when a company is investing in India, or company is buying companies in India, Chinese company is buying companies in India, that creates a very risky situation. By the time China wants to pull out, Indian economy will be destabilized. So this revised FDI policy aims to curb opportunistic takeovers or acquisitions of Indian companies due to the current COVID-19. Many companies have weakened. Many companies are in financial crisis. So many Chinese companies are coming up. Chinese investment is coming up, and they are intruding into our weaker companies and taking over and doing the acquisition. If we see the Chinese economic footprint in India, see Chinese investment in India increased from $1.6 billion in 2014 to $8 billion in 2017. Can you see that? So many folds increase according to a Brookings India report. And it's not like it's one sector. Many sectors have been there seeing the investment from China, and a startup space also. A startup space, if indigenously, that will be very beneficial for the country, but Chinese investment footprint is coming everywhere. See, in 2016, they have invested almost $6,000 million in infrastructure itself. So first we need to discuss what are the routes for FDI. FDI comes under two modes. One is through automatic route, for which companies don't need any government approval. Okay, and second is through government route, for which government's approval is needed, government go ahead is needed, then only the company can invest in our India. But now the new revised FDI policy says what? It says that an entity of a country, that means a company of a country or individual of a country, that country if shares a land border with India, or where the beneficial owner of an investment company into India is situated in that country, or is a citizen of any such country, can invest only under the government route. So if a country is situated in any adjoining country sharing a land border with India, or a person who is owning any company and that person is a citizen of that country which is sharing a land border with India, then the investment can happen only under the government route, no automatic route for those companies, for those FDI. Not only this, also the transfer of ownership in FDI deal will also happen only by the government's approval. So okay, you can't just transfer the ownership to a company which is situated sharing a land border with India. For that transfer of ownership also you will need the government approval. So what about the other countries which are not sharing the land border with India? Those investors which are not sharing a land border with India, that just have to inform the RBI after doing the transaction, and these countries which are sharing the land border with India, their companies, their people, they will have to take the prior permission from the relevant government department. So what is the purpose and impact of this revised FDI policy? Impact is that, see, earlier FDI policy was limited to allowing only Bangladesh and Pakistan via the government route. It's not like previously we were not having any country a specific government route. Yes, we had. From Pakistan and Bangladesh, we had this provision that if an investment is coming in FDI from Pakistan and Bangladesh, because there are some terrorist organizations here, so for that we needed the government route in all sectors. Now the revised rule has brought the Chinese company also under the government route filter, because China is sharing a land border with India. And the concern was that Chinese footprint in Indian business space was increasing exponentially, especially since 2014. Net Chinese investment 1.6 billion in 2014, and I told you this increased to fivefold, that is $8 billion by the end of 2017. Why we are doing this? See, China is a state communist economy. The economy is completely controlled by the state. A state has a footprint everywhere. So there is no clear separation between the Chinese state and private businesses. They are always closely working, and some people say that they are closely working with the People's Liberation Army also. So that is why came this revised FDI policy. Very good step actually. So our next and last topic for today. That topic is National Infrastructure Pipeline. Why this is in news? National Infrastructure Pipeline. Why this is in news? Because the government had created a task force under Atanu Chakrabarti on National Infrastructure Pipeline, and government has said that do we need extra investment? We had proposed 1 lakh, 100 lakh crore rupees. So do we need the extra investment also? That Atanu Chakrabarti Committee on National Infrastructure Pipeline has finally submitted its report to the finance minister, and it says that yes, extra investment is needed, revised investment is needed. Task force says that for building infrastructure projects and driving economic growth as per your expectation, as per your goals, as per your desires, we need not 100 lakh crore, we need 111 lakh crore over the next 5 years, and next 5 years will be 2020 to 2025. So probably you will be working in the government sector and looking forward for this investment, and you will be making the decisions where this investment should happen. So 111 lakh crore is needed now. And why there is increase? Because there came additional data by various ministries and various state government, and they say that no, this 100 lakh crore is not enough. We in total need 11 lakh crore extra. That is why we have this final report saying that we need 111 lakh crore. And this additional data came in between the release of summary NIP report, summary National Infrastructure Pipeline report, and this final submission report by Atanu Chakrabarti. So infrastructure, where this infrastructure will go? See, there will be various projects, various sectors, but the bulk share, almost 70% of this infrastructure is supposed to go in energy sector, road sector, railway sector, and urban projects. So the report also suggests some measures that how do we need to spend. The report says that there should be aggressive push towards asset sale. Asset sale, why? Why we are selling this? Because some assets are getting junked, okay, not being used. So we need to sell those assets. For example, in public sector banks also, if we are selling some share, that also is asset sale only. We have already been doing that, you know that Bharat 22 and other exchange traded funds from the government companies and the private companies also recently. Monetization of infrastructure assets. So we have so many infrastructure assets, we need to monetize this. For example, a railway platform can have many shops. So that is monetization of infrastructure assets. Third thing is setting up of development finance institutions. So we need financing institutions for these infrastructure projects. So separately, apart from regular banks, we should have development oriented finance institution. And the fourth step is says that strengthening the municipal bond market. The local bodies, the municipal bond market should be strengthened, so that municipality institution, urban local body can spend more in smart cities, schooling, hospitals, all those are infrastructure only. So here comes the discussion about the core thing. What is National Infrastructure Pipeline exactly? We read about the report, right? What is that National Infrastructure Pipeline? NIP is an idea that we will create the infrastructure in our country. Infrastructure projects will be created, and that will lead to more jobs, improving ease of living, ease of business, provide equitable access to infrastructure for all. Because suppose a municipality is having the municipal bonds and the municipality gets lots of money, so that will provide equitable access to the people, to the infrastructure, better hospitals, better schools, better parks, better roads, and thereby making growth more inclusive. Everyone will be included in this growth project. NIP, National Infrastructure Pipeline, includes economic and social projects in infrastructure projects also. The schooling, what is that? Social infrastructure. Economic, suppose tomorrow we create a startup ecosystem, so that is economic. It also includes both greenfield and brownfield projects. I told you the difference already. Greenfield is starting from scratch, a new project, and brownfield is that there was already a project, we are working upon to improving it or creating a project on a place where there was already a previous project, so that is brownfield. Then it will help in stepping up annual infrastructure investment to achieve the gross domestic product is expected to become 5 trillion by 2024-25 if this infrastructure pipeline is properly executed. There are doubts, obviously there are various doubts, and it is supposed that after COVID-19 we are not going to achieve this target of $5 trillion in 2024-25. But if this question comes in mains, so you should answer positively according to the government's statements, and you should give reasons, you should give doubts also, but in the conclusion you should be very positive that no, this should be happening, this will happen, 5 trillion economy is achievable. This is difficult, but we can do that. Last point, the center and states are expected to have almost equal share in implementing NIP. Okay, this is not only central government sponsored scheme. The state government and central government both will work towards each other, both will work in collaboration with each other. That is why the report got data from the ministries and the state governments also, right? Because the state government is also involved in this national infrastructure pipeline, and the private sector contribution is also expected to be around 21%. So remaining 79% contribution will come from state governments and central government. The report also says that we need to streamline the process, and the task force has also recommended, the Atanu task force has also recommended that we need to set 3 committees. So what are 3 committees? One committee is for timely execution. That will be a panel to monitor NIP's progress and eliminate any delay if happening. There should be, then we need to check the progress and delay. For that timely execution, we need one panel. This committee is proposing that we need to set up 3 committees for proper implementation of national infrastructure pipeline, and one committee will be panel to monitor NIP progress and eliminate any delay if happening. Second committee is to be proposed for follow-up. That will be a steering committee in each infrastructure ministry for following up of implementation. Once the implementation starts, we need to follow it up. For that, another committee is needed, the report says that. And the third is for raising financial resources. That committee in the Department of Economic Affairs for raising financial resources for the NIP is proposed. And where is this Department of Economic Affairs? This is in Ministry of Finance. Can you tell me in the comment section what 5 ministries? I know that those are 5, okay, but I don't know which ministry, which departments are present in Finance Ministry. So can you tell me which 5 departments are present in Finance Ministry, and which department watches this disinvestment process? Can you specify, please? So that is all for today. This lecture ends here. See you in the next lecture, and in the next lecture we will be completing remaining 4 topics of the April month's economy section. Then we will move to May month.